really well done at the end of all of these, because if I did, make a drinking game. Hello my lovely friends, it's Margaret. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be going over all of the books that I read in January. Now if you're following along with my Fave TBR game, I would definitely suggest checking out my February TBR because that's where I go through how I did, what quests I completed, all of that good stuff. I am not going to be talking about that in this video. This video is just about what I read in January. I think that January was a pretty good reading month for me. I did in fact end up completing most of the books that I put on my TBR. I think 4 out of the 6 books that we are about to talk about are books that I said I was going to read, and then I read. I'm very proud of myself. We are improving. Things are working out. All of these books got either 4 or 5 stars. Like, they were some really just good. I had a good time reading these books. I enjoyed myself so much, even if, like, I think half of them stressed me out so much. The Venn diagram of stressful romances and books that I really enjoyed this month is a circle. Starting out, I read The Darkest Legacy by Alexandra Bracken. I ended up giving this 4 stars. It is the 4th book in the Darkest Minds series. It's kind of like a follow-up, like a wrap-up, a glimpse down the road from the original trilogy. This follows Zhu. She is part of the main group from the trilogy. It's following her 5 years later. We're seeing the fallout of the events of the final book, how kind of trying to rebuild everything with these new things in mind, with more fairness for the kids, is not quite going as expected. Zhu is very much like the mouthpiece, trying to keep the peace, trying to be the shining example of what a prodigy can do. But then she's thrown into this situation where she is being blamed for something that she knows she did not do. She's on the run again, trying to figure out how to solve this issue. It is a little confusing how it starts because she just throws you into a scene with no real context and then pulls you into the past and starts explaining things up to and then continuing on. I would have preferred if we had just kind of started from the event that happens and then gone forward. I felt like things were well enough done that we didn't need that kind of glimpse of what was going on and what the stakes were. I felt like that was really easy to grasp from the very beginning. I do really think that it was an interesting look at what happens after Revolution. What happens after the big bad has been taken down and you are having to rebuild, you're having to redo all of these systems that have been put in place. I loved the way that that is explored in this book. It really drives home the point that, like, the revolution, the moment where you kill the bad guy, that's not where the story ends. I liked how this explored those consequences and then built on top of them. All in all, I thought this was a really interesting setup based off of what had happened in the first 3 books, and it takes it a little bit further and builds on what we already have, but it also is really good. Like, it stands on its own really well. After that, I finished a perennial fave, and that is Roses of May by Dot Hutchison. This is the 2nd book in the Collector series, one of my favorite thriller series of all time. Each one of these books follows a different member of this FBI team that investigates crimes against children. These books are specifically focused around investigations into serial killers. We are following Edison in this one, and we also are following Priya. 5 years ago, Priya's sister was killed by a serial killer, and now she is starting to receive the same flowers that have been left with all of his other victims. They are being sent to her, and so she's kind of like, well, guess who's going to be his next victim? If you couldn't tell, this got 5 stars. It just really hits every single time. I really enjoy the way that Dot is able to build relationships between characters. This has a really fantastic relationship between Priya and her mother, Dashani, and I really liked watching how they interact with each other, how the tragedy of losing both her sister and then eventually her father informs their relationship and the way that they have chosen to move forward from there. It also has a really interesting, like, kind of conversation on the family you're born with versus the family that you build. Like, the way that both builds relationships and makes this particular case really personal, just, it's so well done. I highly recommend this series if you're looking for a thriller series and you have, I guess, a strong stomach. There's a lot of violence against women and children in these books, so it can get kind of dark. Next book we finished was my favorite book of January, and that is We Free the Stars by Hafsa Fazel. I will be sending my therapy bill to this author because the amount of stress that this book put me through, I just, like, it was a lot. and I gave it 5 stars. This is the sequel to We Hunt the Flame. We follow Nasir and Zafira in We Hunt the Flame. It's basically just about them having to go to this island and having to vie against each other just a little bit to try and help bring magic back to Arawia. They come from very different backgrounds. Nasir is known as the Prince of Death. He is the Sultan's son. He has been trained as an assassin. Zafira is known as the Hunter of Demenhun. No one knows that she is a woman, but she has been providing for her village for many, many years by going into this very like dark magical forest that no one can go into except for her. When I say the tension and build between Nasir and Zafira, it is so good in book 1, and it is ratcheted up to like 75 in this book. They are just both struggling with the fact that they obviously have a very specific feelings for each other, but they also know that like the other person, like they're so insecure in how the other person feels about them because of the events of the last book, and also because of certain things that are happening in this book. Like, this is one of those, like, I know people a lot of the time, if people end up kissing in books, they don't count it slow burn. I still think that this is very slow burn. You're gonna be frustrated, you're gonna be annoyed, you're also gonna be like, but I understand why they are making the decisions that they are making. This particular book does a really good job of expanding on the world. The first book is primarily on the island of Shar. We don't get a lot of the surrounding world in that book, but this one really develops what we know from the characters from the first book. We start to, like, we're shown that. I also think that it does a really good job of developing different character plot points from the first book. I don't really want to go into those because those are kind of spoilery in some cases. There is so much that happens in this book. It's like the plot, the way that she does plot is like everything just kind of stacks on top of each other, and so you're still having to deal with what you start out thinking is the main problem, and then but then you have worse problems going on top of that, and she does that so well. After that, I read Our Violent Ends by Chloe Gong. This is the second book in the These Violent Delights duology. It is a retelling of Romeo and Juliet. In the first book, we meet Roma and Juliet in 1926 Shanghai. They are both the heirs to rival gangs in that city, and we see a lot of the interplay between, like, the different factions and the way that things go. This does a fantastic job of taking that conflict between the White Flowers and the Scarlet Gang and just, like, making it 10 times more complicated. I really appreciated how Chloe Gong was able to take what she set up in the first book and go, okay, here is more. This is more that is happening. Here are the cracks that you did not see in the first book. We now have time to go into those. She did a good job of correcting my few issues that I had with book 1. There was a lot in book 1 that I felt like could have been cut, that felt like filler. There's nothing in here that feels like filler. You're just like, every single part is like filled with tension. You are flipping pages. You're trying to get to I finished this in 2 days, guys. Like, you need to know what happens next. Everything is so stressful. Everything is happening. You're not sure who is on whose side and what's going on. And you're also just wanting Roma and Juliet to, like, make up and not be mad at each other anymore. And, well, it's a little more complicated than that, but again, spoilery. Chloe Gong did a really good job of adapting these novels, of honoring the original Romeo and Juliet plot, of honoring the source material while also not necessarily being tied to that source material. And the way that she's able to bring those changes into the plot and make them further the story that you are waiting for, just really well done. The next book I read was Rosaline Palmer Takes the Cake by Alexis Hall. This is about the eponymous Rosaline Palmer. She is a single mom. She is struggling, and so she has entered into this contest called Bake Expectation. She ends up also, while at that competition, running into Alan and Harry, and she kind of is torn between the two of them, because we have Alan, who is very much approved by her very snooty, judgmental parents, and then we have Harry, who's good with her kid, really kind of gets her. Like, there's just an interplay. I might have a personal favorite, and I might want the one that is not my favorite to get run over by a truck, specifically the other one's truck or van, or what, I guess it's a van. I thought this was really cute. Like, I loved the way that this romance was built up. I did find it interesting that she chooses to have Rosaline get into a relationship with one of these guys, like, right away, and then she slowly takes us through showing us why this relationship is not a good thing while simultaneously building her relationship with the other guy. There's also a lot of character growth and a lot of not like realization that Rosaline has to go through. I really liked how the beats in the relationship are also corresponding with growth in Rosaline's character from the person that we see at the beginning to the person that we will see at the end. She is a really well-developed main character. She is flawed almost to a fault. She's just so messy, and it is so real. Like, it's real, and it really, like, you don't see characters that truly feel like a real person in this way very often. Cast in this is fantastic. We have all kinds of fun characters. The love interest gets 5 stars from me. He is wonderful, and I love him. And yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that, because again, I don't want to spoil things. The author is really able to do this thing where he will bring in the other cast members and use them to show us something about Rosaline as a person, about how she handles things, about where she is with certain things, and like where she needs to grow. I really could have cared less about the baking aspect. It was just there as a vehicle for the plot. I have no idea if any of that is accurate, but I really enjoyed what Alexis Hall was able to build through this sort of setting. I gave this 5 stars. And the final book that we need to talk about is Iron Widow by Sharon J. Zhao. This is a retelling of the life of Wu Zetian. If you don't know, Wu Zetian is China's only female emperor, as in she ruled in her own right. If you're familiar with the story of like Hatshepsut over in Egypt, this is a very like similar kind of story. This is set in a future where this alien species is attacking human beings, and they, in order to defend themselves, they have these kind of like chi mechas that they are able to build. The thing about this is, though, is that there is a dual pilot system, and in this dual pilot system, it's very unequal as far as the partners are going. You have the male pilot, and then you have his female counterpart, and unfortunately, the girls end up getting drained of their chi much more often. Wu Zetian is going after one specific boy in particular because he killed her sister, and she wants revenge for that. However, he doesn't even last one battle in the mecha with her. That earns her this infamous title of Iron Widow, which is a very rare female pilot that has killed her male counterpart, and so she ends up getting paired with the most powerful male pilot that they have. This was like, the world building in this is immaculate. It is perfect. It is so just well done. I have yet to have anyone say a bad thing about the world building, the plot, the characters. There's so much that happens in this book, and I just, like, I'm not going to disagree with any of them. I agree with every single good thing I have heard said about this book. My personal favorite things are the way that history informs the world building and the plot of this. I really enjoy the way that Sharon J. Zhao takes that, and they make it a part of the plot, but they're not married to exactly retelling Wu Zetian's story. I also really just love the characters. We have a little OT3 in this book, and they are just like wonderful and mature about it, and I appreciated that. I especially enjoyed like the conversations that were had around women and AFAB people, and how the way that society treats them, the way that they are seen as property, the way that we are belittled or dismissed because we are seen as not as important as our male or AMAB counterparts. And I just, like, it spoke to me on a very deep level, and I really enjoyed it. There is a lot of dark stuff in this. Just be aware. A lot of death, gore, body horror, bloody things. Keep in, like there is definite just ableism, but also abuse involved in that. So favorite book this month obviously was We Free the Stars. It was everything that I wanted. It was everything that I needed. It just took my expectations and blew them away. Least favorite book this month? Our Violent Ends, I guess, maybe. Like, it's definitely not going to be making my list of most disappointing books, because like it was so good. It was so good, but it was also, for reasons that I cannot go into, not my favorite. If you are feeling chatty, go ahead and let me know in the comments what was the first book that you picked up in 2022. If you are feeling chatty, I want to know what your first read of the year was. Obviously, you know mine was The Darkest Legacy, but I want to know what yours is. If you are not feeling chatty, but you want to let me know that you watched to the end of the video, go ahead and leave me the little one emoji, all right? Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, if you enjoyed this video, I will have videos over here that you might enjoy as well. I'll make sure to stick my February TBR so you can kind of see my journey through Fabelin as I am going on this TBR game. That is it for now, my friends. Happy reading, and I will see you later when we will talk about more wordy, nerdy things. Bye! Hello, my lovely friends. The light is dying, and so is my patience.